On this episode of Locked Up and Locked Out, we sit down with a defender who knows what it means to fight from both sides of the system.
It's not whether or not someone is innocent, right? For me, that's not the point.
Right.
The point is whether or not the state can prove it,
Right.
that they're guilty.
Right.
And those are the rules that we have to play by, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
The problem here, though, Adam, is that it doesn't stop there.
No.
Because there are so many other parts of the system that seem designed to inhibit fair play.
Absolutely.
Dan Lage went from dropping out of high school to freeing the wrongfully convicted, including Marcus Jackson, who spent nearly 20 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit.
It's an easily provable crime,
Right.
right? All the prosecution has to do is point to the fact that you weren't here when your name was called,
Right.
and you're guilty. And that in and of itself is fine. The problem is that failure to appear is attached to other crimes, other allegations. And if you're innocent of those, they got you.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are small pieces built within the system that make it frustrating to try to play by the rules, because I want to do that. But these, I think sometimes diabolically socioeconomic inequities that act against that and that make it so much more difficult for those of us who really want to play by the rules honestly.
Now, a public defender and professor at UConn Law, Dan's story is proof that real justice begins with understanding, then action.
But the question was, if I have the ability to write you a check, and I'm just going to pass you that check, it's blank, put down the number.
Right.
And in exchange for that, I want 20 years, your best 20 years. What's the number? And I've asked that question multiple times. And people will always give me the answer that I think is the right one. There is no number.
Right.
I know a lot of good people who have served time justly for things that they have done, that they've admitted to doing,
Right.
who can go on to be great contributors of this society,
Absolutely.
members of their community.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for signing in and to Locked Up and Locked Out, the podcast. I have the distinguished guest, Mr. Dan Lage, a man of many hats, a professor, a student of law. Thank you for joining me.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you so much, Adam.
Yes.
And congratulations on all your success, and congratulations on what is a very inspiring podcast. And I'm really glad that you're doing it. I'm more glad to be here.
Guests like you bring meaning to a change. I inquired, you know what I'm saying? I challenged myself to think outside the box, to bring forth a new vision of what change looks like for the masses moving forward. When you say formerly incarcerated, wrongly locked up, and locked out, basically, you know, from an unjust system that is predicated on just hurling you away, not giving you the ability for the road of redemption or showing that you've been wrongly convicted. So in your own words, and just give the audience basically a little insight on who you are.
You know, and once again, thank you for having me. One thing that I heard in what you just said is this idea of being inspiring and really creating a space for change, advocacy, and an outlook for different practices, different policies. And one thing that I prided myself on is being a true voice for that.
Yes.
And so who I am, well, right now I'm a public defender, and I certainly am not here in that capacity. I'm here in my own personal capacity, but that's where I am now. But it's not where I started. I started as a criminal defense lawyer in 2015 for a private law firm. Ruane Attorneys at Law, to whom I'm eternally grateful for the opportunities that they gave me, including making me partner of that law firm back in 2019. And I had ascended to a height I never thought possible.
Right.
Because when I came up, I grew up in Bridgeport. I was a homeless kid. I never made it past 8th grade.
Wow.
I dropped out of high school 4 times and never went back. And I grew up on the east side, north end, east side, ultimately making it to a place where I was an 18-year-old father. And it really inspired me at the time to take my life very seriously. And this idea of this my son at the time, this little person, inspiring that within me is something that I want to put a pin in right now, because I'm going to bring it full circle. I then go to community college. Well, I get my GED, I go to community college, and eventually Quinnipiac University Law School, become this criminal defense lawyer, and become this partner of this very successful law firm. But ultimately, we are now 20 years later almost. I have another son who's now 2. And at the time I was asking myself many questions. And the most important one was, why did I get into this? And I was successful, I was making money, and I was certainly helping people, but it was for an incentive that was purely economic.
Right.
And at the time, it just didn't sit well with me with respect to what it is that I wanted out of my life and my career. And so I resigned. I just resigned. I just walked away from it.
That's powerful.
I appreciate you saying that. And it was a hard decision. It was a decision that I certainly leaned into my wife on and sought her counsel for. But I couldn't be happier, even though I walked away from a very great law firm and a great group of colleagues that I work with. I'm now serving the public, and I think in its purest form, as a criminal defense lawyer for people that cannot afford private counsel. And it brings me such joy every day to be able to do that.
Wow. How do a man in your position pivot, like just stop midstream and say, you know what, I'm not doing enough, or this is not the direction that I want my life to go in? I'm like, because money is a powerful incentive. I mean, you got it made, you know, as they say, you laying in the shade and just doing what you want to do on how you want to do it. And then back to your point of having 2 small children. Children are everything. And then to add a caveat to that, to want to do your citizen duty, or, you know what I'm saying, like make your life feel as if it's worth living, you know, in the sense of provoking true change. And just like your story is so amazing, man. Just, I want to sit here and I want the audience to understand the gravity, you know what I'm saying, the power that you exempt, you know what I'm saying, that you display each and every day, you know, that you walk on this earth. Please move forward, man.
Well, thank you for saying that. It's incredibly kind of you. To answer your question, I don't know. What I think is that I couldn't be here today without other people having helped me. That would be impossible.
Right.
There are certain people, certain groups, certain forces in the world that will tell you, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Just work hard. Right. If you put in the effort, it will come. To some degree, I can understand that. I don't agree with it.
Right.
I think we all need to lean on each other in some way.
Absolutely.
And that happened for me. I mean, there's so many people I can point to during that evolution that were there for me, that gave me either a space to study or a job to be able to survive with, or the love and support that allowed me to keep being driven.
Right.
And so in recognition of that, looking at this baby boy that I have now in 2023 and reflecting, because reflection is very important.
Absolutely.
Reflecting on where I've come and where I might be going. You ask yourself a lot of questions, and if you're honest with yourself, you will get answers that you're comfortable with, that you can die eventually, hopefully a long time from now. I will die at peace, knowing that that deep and honest reflection led me to a path that either I was destined for, or a path that I had really truly been working toward, and I did not ignore that feeling, right? And in that same sense, in 2022, I decided to join UConn Law as an adjunct. I was invited by the previous professor to teach this class that you were so gracious to be a part of last fall.
Amazing class.
And it's called Street Law. And it's a civil rights class. I teach substantive civil rights content. But the point of the class is that my law students then go into high schools in the area and pass those same principles to 14, 15, 16-year-old students who may believe that they can't believe, who may believe that they don't have the opportunity to be where I am, right? And of course they do. They just need to know that they have a connection, that they have maybe an inroad to get there, because a lot of those kids, I've seen it. I took that class in 2014. I see the change once you make that connection. And if my students are able to do that with those kids, it made it worth it for me, because in terms of financially, no, it's not worth it for me to drive to Hartford to teach that class every fall. But it's so worth it to me to be able to know that I'm some small part of giving back to the community here in Hartford, and hopefully across the state of Connecticut, if we can get this class in Quinnipiac or another law school.
So, like, it's so riveting to be empowered. For somebody to say you matter, your life counts. So, like, you're doing a tremendous deed of showing these young souls, men and women, that they have the ability to be whatever they want to be. Just dream and put the work in, and understand that you have shoulders of people that, like yourself, that's willing to be right aside of you to help you move forward. If that's what you choose to be.
Big part is who you know.
Right.
Network.
I mean, your network is your net growth. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's more than money. I want to backtrack a little for a second. When you was in private practice, the many people that you ran across that was actually innocent, how did that affect you moving forward?
So there's the people that I know were innocent, and I think the easiest example for me to cite is Marquise Jackson, because he was my client. And then there are the people that I believe are innocent.
Right.
Those are the cases that are toughest, because I can sit here today and I can't say I know they're innocent. Right. But I truly did believe they were.
Right.
And then that group of people splits, because some of them are, I would say, forced in some cases, encouraged in others, to resolve their case, right? With a plea deal as the prime example. And then another subset of that group, they fight and they lose. You know, they go to trial. They play by the rules of the system.
Right.
And they nonetheless lose anyway. And so I think that the way that I view it is, it's not whether or not someone is innocent, right? For me, that's not the point.
Right.
The point is whether or not the state can prove it,
Right.
that they're guilty.
Right.
And those are the rules that we have to play by, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
The problem here, though, Adam, is that it doesn't stop there.
No.
Because there are so many other parts of the system that seem designed to inhibit fair play.
Absolutely.
I'll cite you the best example that I've come up with. In 2020, I wrote an article that was published on the Connecticut Law Tribune's, in the Connecticut Law Tribune. And this was shortly following George Floyd's murder.
Right.
And there was a lot of conversation in this state about reform and changes in policy to benefit those who have been historically disenfranchised, okay? And we can call it exactly what it is, minorities,
Right.
right? And the discussion was robust. It was frequent and it was loud. And all I wanted to do was test that. And so my question was, if you're serious, and I'm speaking to the members of the institutions, whether that be the lawmakers, the players in the judicial branch system, in the criminal justice system.
Right.
If you're serious, I have an idea. It's free. We can do it right away. At the time, you may remember, this is in the middle of the pandemic, so we were all very concerned and aware of catching COVID. And there were a lot of measures in place in the system to help combat that, including in the courthouses. I said everyone would be a fan of this, from lawyers to judges to the marshals in the courthouse, but certainly the people with whom we're discussing, and those are the disenfranchised, who tend to be, by and large, black and brown males charged with crimes.
Right.
And that solution was, how about this? Starting tomorrow, we'll do it tomorrow. If you're represented by a lawyer, private or public defender, you don't have to come to court.
Right.
Simple. Unless you're at a sentencing, we have to address some condition of your bond, something like that. You're entering a plea, something that obviously their presence is required.
Right.
Aside from that, you don't have to be there. The lawyers will take care of it. I've already sworn a duty, an oath of honesty and candor toward this system, right? I'm not going to lie about whether or not someone's fled the country if I know it or something like that. I'm not going to purposefully keep someone away from the enforcement of justice. And the reception to that small idea with profound impact was overwhelmingly positive. I'm going to ask you right now, Adam, we're sitting here in 2025, it's 5 years later. Have you heard that that's changed at all?
Nope.
Of course it hasn't, because as you may know, failing to appear in court is an easily provable crime. Right? All the prosecution has to do is point to the fact that you weren't here when your name was called, and you're guilty. And that in and of itself is fine. The problem is that failure to appear is attached to other crimes, other allegations. And if you're innocent of those, they got you.
Yeah.
And now, my ultimate question was, why are we burdening young mothers who have jobs, who have children, and maybe single mothers, to have to call out of work to come to court?
Right.
Why are we burdening a young man who can only catch the train from another part of the state, who has to take a 3-hour train ride / bus ride / walk, to go to court just for me to walk out of the courtroom and tell him, hey, we got you another continuance?
Right.
Why should we have to burden these folks with that? And if we can just handle it as lawyers, then we don't need that requirement. But of course, that requirement still exists. And that's how I view, and I know there's a long way to answer your question, sometimes there are small pieces built within the system that make it frustrating to try to play by the rules, because I want to do that. But these are I think sometimes diabolically socioeconomic inequities that act against that, and that make it so much more difficult for those of us who really want to play by the rules honestly.
So, how do we as a society come to grips with when we hear these tales and tales of people that's been wrongly convicted? Because frankly, a lot of people don't know what that entails, what that really truly means. A person who's been wronged by this justice system, I mean, frankly, like you said, is geared for brown and black people, and it catches, you know what I'm saying, a lot of white people in the net as well. But here we have a situation out of New Haven where we had numerous cases of people that's been wrongly convicted, more so than the national average throughout the country.
It's true.
How has today yet there's been nothing done as far as a federal probe or things of that nature?
I don't know. What I can say is it's never been unpopular to enforce crime, right? All of us, every single one of us don't, well, other than anarchists, I suppose, but most of us believe that some law enforcement is necessary. And we can go back to periods, I recall during the Reagan administration, there was, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but there was a story, a campaign against this person about how certain people would commit certain crimes. And it generated in society a fear that I don't think was warranted. And right now we're operating under the same sort of thing with respect to immigrants.
Right.
And so my point is I'm not sure there's an easy fix, because on the one hand, you're trying to convince people there have been extremely unjust results that have ruined lives.
Right.
And none of us are interested in that.
Right.
No one wants someone locked up for something they didn't do. But the question is what's the value proposition when you have that on one side and bringing offenders to justice who have wronged, who've broken the law and hurt people on the other. And that's a hard thing to marry and make sense of. I asked the question just a little while ago to someone when I was speaking about Marquise Jackson's situation. He was incarcerated for almost 20 years, his best years.
Right.
And at some point, I think recently he received an award from the state. And at some point, maybe he'll receive a judgment in his lawsuit. But the question was, if I have the ability to write you a check, and I'm just going to pass you that check, it's blank, put down the number.
Right.
And in exchange for that, I want 20 years, your best 20 years. What's the number? And I've asked that question multiple times. And people will always give me the answer that I think is the right one. There is no number.
Right.
And the trick is capturing that sentiment and being able to translate it to reform, policy reform.
Right.
And that's hard, because that reform only comes at the expense of what the other side will argue is the weakening of law enforcement. That's just not true.
No.
It's not true. We're just asking for the system to work in the way that it's designed.
Because I believe by doing such things as you're prescribing, only strengthens people position that the system is good.
And it's working the way it's intended.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you have some bad actors, then you have some good law enforcement, but the ones that's good, that don't speak up against the injustice that's being perpetrated by the bad actors, makes the whole pool tainted.
Wouldn't it be great if we lived in a world where cops were popular to everyone,
right,
where we didn't have to protest? I would want that world where police officers are respected, revered, and trusted.
Right. But then when we have situations like George Floyd, it leaves a nasty taste in what should be everybody's mouth. A stain such as that on not just that community, or our community, being a minority community, but in general, because I was mad as hell when I seen how he was treated, less than. Nobody should be treated less than who they are. You're a human being. You bleed just like I bleed. And then when you bring it back around to the very subject in which we talk about, which is an unjust system, and when we are released back into society, people have a notion that everything's fixed, everything's all right. Well, you're forgetting about housing, just to have the understanding of the mechanics that's at work, with just piecing your life back together. So when you have people that starting companies, stores, or financial groups, or real estate companies, and they're doing great things moving forward, in these communities that they've once been ostracized and expelled from, when you have a judge say he's unfit for society, he's unredeemable, he has unredeemable qualities. these are all sound bites that makes the public scared that these people are misfits, that they can't be redeemed, or you frankly don't care in this society. You forfeited your life. What's your take on that?
You said near the beginning of this interview that I had a great story.
Right.
I've heard that from people, and I love to be able to tell that story. And the reception to that story is, wow, what a change. What a change you've made. Oh, that's so much growth. We're so proud. What a great story.
Right.
Yes. And that's also true for everyone else too.
Right.
It's not just true in the sense that I started from the bottom and worked my way up, and again, with a lot of help from a lot of different people, to get to where I'm at today. To be able to be so bold as to resign from a very good law firm as a partner to become a public defender. It's also true for people that serve their time for a crime that they've committed, are released, and then seek to contribute in society. It's true for them too. And so you can't have one without the other. And I know people that are good friends of mine, family even, that will say disparaging negative things about people that have been convicted of a crime.
Right.
You know, well, you've been convicted of a crime. You should have known, when a person can't vote, or a person can't have access to loans, or if a person can't have access to housing, as you just mentioned. And I just think that's unfair.
Right.
Because I know a lot of good people who have served time justly for things that they have done, that they've admitted to doing,
Right.
who can go on to be great contributors of this society,
Absolutely.
members of their community. And it's a stigma. It's a stigma that we have a problem defeating, because in my sense, I've never been convicted. Dan Lage has never been convicted of any crime, right? So somehow that makes the results of my efforts mean more than someone who can achieve greatness too.
Right.
I don't think so. That shouldn't be the case. So removing that stigma is important, and being able to communicate to people and express to people honestly. Yes, there's room in society for both consequence, but also for redemption as well.
Right. Wow, this is great, man. Just sitting here, we can sit here for days and just go on about these conversations. And I hope that we'll be in a position to have another sit down on these very topics, man, that means so much, and that's very near and dear to both of us, I think. And I just thank you for just giving me, your heartfelt, time, and man, your knowledge, man, is just remarkable.
Well, it's very kind of you to say, and I know I'm speaking on behalf of everyone listening. Thank you for being such a source of inspiration for so many people. Keep it up.
I'm trying.
Very proud of you.
Yes, thank you.
All right,
So this has been another episode of Locked Up and Locked Out, and I hope everybody has walked away with something new and profound to take to their friends and just think about. Thank you, and stay tuned to the next episode of Locked Up and Locked Out.